SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back to the class. Today we will start our cognitive portion, behavioral and cognitive methods. So today we will give a general discussion what are the varieties of way are present through which we can measure and analyze the behavioral and cognitive methods. So let us first start with the definition of cognitive ergonomics. Cognitive ergonomics is concerned with the mental process. Okay, so whenever we are talking about any ergonomics analysis which is connected with our mental process, how do we perceive, how do we think, how do we act upon on the responses that we are receiving. So all the mental process such as perception, memory, reasoning and motor responses, so connected motor responses, as they affect the interaction among human and other elements of the system. So cognitive ergonomics mainly deal with mental workload, decision making, skilled performance. Very important aspect is skilled performance. Okay, whenever we start any ergonomics intervention, you must have seen if there is some activity which is connected to skill, craftsmanship, anything which needs high level of skilled thing, then it becomes very difficult for us to go for ergonomics physical intervention. So those cases we need to really look into from the cognitive ergonomics perspective. Human computer interaction, definitely. Human reliability, so we will be talking about all kinds of how reliable the interaction happen between the man, machine and within the particular environment, and of course work stress and training. So these all are the topics normally we try to cover within the purview of cognitive ergonomics. However, these are not only the things. We may coin some other terminology as well, because these are something which we commonly use. Apart from that, we can coin many other terminology which we can include in cognitive ergonomics if we follow the definition of it. So remembering the elements of this particular cognitive ergonomics, one is perception, second is memory and reasoning. These three components are very, very important when we talk about cognitive ergonomics. Now these three components, how they are connected with our motor responses. Okay, so suppose we are looking at a particular object and suppose it's a very common example that we try to give in when we start the cognitive ergonomics, this particular area of study. If we see a red light, definitely we know there is a danger or there is need to stop. How do we take that decision? How do we assess that yes, we need to stop? Because it's a reasoning that we do. So we have a perception about the red color from our learning, from our memory, and we do a action against that particular response received from that. So whenever we are talking about cognitive ergonomics, this perception, memory, reasoning are very much important, and this mental workload, decision making, skill performance, human computer interaction, human reliability and work stress and training are the major component that we normally talk about when we try to go for cognitive ergonomics. Apart from that, definitely we can coin many other terminology. So for this whole exercise related to, as we did in physical, that various tools, techniques we try to understand, learn and practice. Here also for cognitive ergonomics, what we will do, we will try to first classify. Okay, classification of behavioral and cognitive methods. So major classification we will try to do in steps, and for each classification what we will do, we will learn majorly available techniques. I won't say that we will be able to cover all and everything whatever is available, because it's a time span is restricted. So what we will do, whatever possible and whatever easy to discuss in this particular platform we will do, and definitely interest is commonly used or majorly used tools and techniques. Okay, so first what we try to do is general analysis method. Under that we have several techniques. Then we have cognitive task analysis method. It's a major area that we definitely need to work whenever we go for behavioral and cognitive ergonomics. Then error analysis, which is also important aspect when we talk about production, productivity and all those things. Workload and situation analysis method. This is an area where we really need to put an attention or give an attention, and we need to do lot of intervention when we try to do something in the system level, at the system level. Okay, so when we are trying to improve something from the system level, this particular aspect is very, very important. Of course, at the end we will try to conclude or summarize the whole topic. So in general analysis method, we will try to focus mainly on the observation, interview, verbal protocol, repertory grid and focus group. Each one we will be discussing in separate section. Today I will give the brief of them. Okay, then in under cognitive task analysis, hierarchical task analysis, commonly we know call it as HTA, cognitive allocation of functional methodology, critical decision method, applied cognitive work analysis. Okay, so all techniques we will be learning separately. Under see, it's not only this much, we may have some more techniques available. However, these are the common techniques, so we will be discussing these. Okay, apart from that also some more available. You, based on your research interest, based on your study interest, definitely you can find them out. Third, we will be discussing on the error analysis method. In error analysis, we will go for systemic human error reduction and prediction approach. So this in short we call it Sherpa. So this particular technique we will be learning and we will be practicing. So for all tools and technique, as we did in physical ergonomics, everybody should practice, everybody should collect their own data, and in the discussion section maybe we can discuss it. Then task analysis for error identification. So this is also very important when we talk about the productivity. Next part will be the workload and situational analysis method. In this particular sector, we will go for multiple resources time sharing model. It's a model through which we will try to visualize or try to see our system. Multimodal critical path analysis and situational awareness global assessment technique. This situational awareness global assessment technique, again it's very, very important when we talk at the system level. So let us start slowly with the general analysis. So this is the schematic representation. How do we divide them and in a broad classification. So if we try to classify them, so it is mainly it starts with the general analysis, then cognitive task method, error analysis, workload and situation analysis. Here I would like to mention one thing. It's not that each component are important for every research. Okay, so depending on the requirement, depending on the type of objectives you have, you can definitely pick one you can pick 2 or you can follow all 4. So it's not mandatory that you should go in a sequence like this. However, whenever we start any kind of intervention, it starts with general analysis method because it gives a direction to you. Whereas cognitive task analysis method also, if you start with that, maybe you have a prior study or some kind of pilot study from where you have a lead and you can start directly from the cognitive task analysis. But it is nowhere restricted that you cannot start with workload and situational analysis method, because if you have a lead that it is the requirement of your study, you can definitely start with it. Okay, but it's a baby step that we try to always take. We start with general, then go for the cognitive task analysis, error analysis, and the situational workload and situational. If it is in the same way, if you want to conclude it in a detailed manner, however, it is not mandatory. Okay, so under general analysis method, as I mentioned earlier, we have observation, interviews, verbal protocol, repertory grid, and focus group. These are majorly used. Today we will give short description. In the next class, I will take you for each with example. Okay. So in observation, what it is? If we talk about observation, so the core approaches in this is the ergonomist toolkit. So it's a very basic if we talk about the observation, and for each and every study, if you talk about cognitive or ergonomics or physical ergonomics, this observational technique from both perspective is very important. Okay. So these approaches feed data into many methods, like whatever information we are getting from this particular study or particular method, what will happen, the interpretation of this part of your study can be the input of many other process, many other techniques, especially when we talk about hierarchical task analysis. From the data received from the observational observation, you can take input from there and give start with your hierarchical task analysis. Same thing will happen with the cognitive task analysis, verbal protocol, and human error identification methodologies. Okay. So the three main ways to collect the observational data is the first is direct observation, indirect observation, and participant observation. These all three varieties we will be describing in detail in next class. So observational data can take in many form. Okay, so depending on the type of objectives, type of research interest we have, we can have the how do we collect the information from the observation. One is time and error data. So for each and every element of your activity, you can collect the time data. Okay, how much time it is taken, how the person who is working is spending time, what is the activity time taken. So all these are possible. Also it is possible to collect the error data. So in a particular given task, how many errors are happening, so that is also possible to collect information from the observational technique. Next is description and frequencies of activity. So whenever we are observing a particular task in detail, what happens, the first is important is the description of the study. So that description can help you to get to make a blueprint of the whole work. Okay, so this description actually will give you a detailed analysis, detailed understanding where the cognitive obstruction or load or which further tool you can use to identify them. All these things is possible only if you are getting your data in the descriptive format. Also frequency of activities. Frequency of activities means how frequently you are performing that particular task. then definitely verbatim protocol will be doing this, and behavioral narratives. Here also we will be describing the process in detail. Next, as I mentioned, after observation, within general we have observation. Second very important tool that we frequently use in the field of design, in the field of industrial ergonomics, occupational health and many other cases is the interview. Now these interview can have three major type or three major component. Okay, so one will be the completely unstructured. The interview, many of us definitely used it in our research life, that some interviews are completely unstructured. We will discuss what it is, what should be the assumption of the completely unstructured interview, how do we analyze it in further semi-structured and completely structured. So what exactly it means? A structure of questioning is proposed as starting with open question. After the open questioning, the probing questions are always asked. This is the way how do we go ahead. At the end, a closed question finish particular interview. These steps are necessary. Okay, so starting and ending. So apart from that, whatever information are getting collected may not be considered as a part of data collection of interview. So from where you are starting, so the first question of your interview is very important, as well as the ending question or ending remarks are very, very important. So when we are talking about completely unstructured, it's a random questions are asked depending on the discussion. Semi-structured, there will be some agenda, some questions which will follow particular agenda, but it may deviate from the path that follow some interesting line of query. Okay, so it's not very much structured, not a single questions. It's not like that. What will happen? We'll have some agenda points, and from that agenda point all questions will follow those agenda points. However, there may be a deviation from in the discussion, in the question answering session, depending on the interest. Okay, depending what are the inquiries are coming, depending on that we may divert a little bit. So how to gather information from such cases, or where we can use such tool for collecting information, that is very important for us to know, and we will be discussing it in detail. Third is definitely a complete structured. So by nomenclature itself we can understand what do we mean by completely structured. So it's a verbal questionnaire with recording. Okay, so you have certain sets of questions, and you are going to ask only those questions. It's so starting question, second question, third question, all questions are set, and you have definite answer for that. Okay, so that is completely structured question. So we will be discussing all these in detail, where and how we should use this tool to gather information. Now next, after questionnaire, interview, then another tool is very important and useful tool is verbal protocol. So the data from the verbal protocol or verbal transcript analyzed in the content. Okay, so whatever we are getting information, we go for the content analysis, whatever content we are generating from this. So the transcript data come from this protocol gathered from live recording performance of that particular task. So we do a recording, and then what we do, we come back to the laboratory and try to develop the content whatever was there in the whole period, and try to collect those information. So the transcript can be coded and analyzed at various level of details from participants word to phrases. So it absolutely depends at what level, at which degree you want to analyze them. Depending on the objectives, depending on the area that you would like to explore, these verbal protocol detailing can be done. Okay, so it's absolutely based on the researcher's interest. Then repertory grid, it's again a very, what can I say, it's a very important and useful tool. Okay, we use definitely in the field of design, in the field of occupational health, industrial engineering, especially when we are about to start something very new and we need information. So those cases, this tool is very important. So what it is, a method used to elicit personal construct from the people, okay, which is very important when we talk about cognitive ergonomics, because perception actually varies, keeps on varying from person to person. Depending on the situation, perception varies. Okay, so identifying the personal construct is very important in many cases. So based on personal construct theory, this methodology has three main stages. First is the pool of artifacts, and need to be defined. First we need to identify those artifacts and we need to define them. Triads are drawn from that particular tool. So majorly what we call it, that three groups of artifacts, so that's why triad. Okay, then what we do, ask to state the differences and similarities between one and other two groups. That comparison kind of thing we try to build. Then participants are asked to rate all artifacts against the construct and the matrix is analyzed. So the last portion, which is very important, because here you need lot of practice, lot of experience. So normally what happens for this particular case, understanding the data and interpreting the data depends on the skill or experience that you develop. Okay, so participants, what they are asked to rate all the artifacts. Okay, so whatever artifacts we have gathered against the construct, and a particular matrix is need to be developed and need to be analyzed. So this analysis is very important and critical. So the results provide a set of personal construct for product evaluation. This process is repeated with a large set of individuals and a large set of artifacts. Okay, so it's a this particular process can be done in iterative process. Okay, 1, 2, 3, you can repeat. Okay, then some common constructs are likely to emerge, because when you keep on doing it, something which is very common, it comes up, and then you have an idea that what kind of personal construct you are getting from it. So this method is used to examine the different sort of construct that people hold and the level of artifacts classes. So you get at the end kind of classifications. Okay, so using that, maybe you can take it further, how the system need to be developed. This is again very commonly used tool in the field of design. It's a focus groups study. So it is an extension of the individual interview. So when we talk about individual interview, it's a person, one person and another person is taking interview. However, it is focus group. So basically it is used in market research and product design, and focus group people gather together to talk about particular individual and the collective reaction against a event, to a particular event. So it's not an individual, it's a group of people who are connected to this particular event. Okay, so here it is very important for us to understand who are our focus group. So whenever we are doing a focus group study, so sample selection is very important, and the criteria, inclusion and exclusion criteria for this focus group sample is very important for us. Now, As I mentioned, today we will be discussing all in brief, and from next class onwards each tool will be described in detail. So let us go for the cognitive task analysis method. So these methods are used for describing the knowledge and strategies required for task performance. Okay. Specially, cognitive task analysis method are classified into 4 major categories. One is hierarchical task analysis. Many of us must have done already. Still, we will be learning this technique in detail. Allocation of function method, critical decision method, and applied cognitive work analysis. So, brief description of hierarchical task analysis. It was initially developed in process to need for greater understanding of cognitive task. So, initially it was for that. However, this cognitive hierarchical task analysis, this is a very common tool which is being used in many other fields in current days. So, HTA, I think it is a printing mistake, HTA describes a system in terms of goal and sub-goal with feedback loop in a nested hierarchy. So, hierarchy, so we give some grading and we try to make a nest of it, right. This approach can be used to describe any system inherently flexible. It can be used to many ends, okay, from person specification to training requirements. So, we really do not know where the results can be used. Once we do an hierarchical task analysis with an objective, it may happen, it lead you to some other direction as well, and your study direction may change. So, this hierarchical task analysis, when we have certain things like step by step process we have to follow, in that cases where the problems, where the interventions are required is very important for us to know, and this hierarchical task analysis definitely give you a result. So, also it gives the error prediction. So, we can really foresee that where that error can be. Okay, so when we draw an hierarchical task analysis chart, or we create that particular table for hierarchical task analysis, that we will discuss how to do that. So we will take a task and then we will practice it. When we do that, then what will happen? We will be able to predict the error that may possible to come, and their designers has a big role that if we can predict that possible system error is going to happen, we may change the design process, we may change the design or may change the element of that particular design, and we can avoid it beforehand. To team performance assessment, of course, if a particular task is performed by a particular group of people, particular team, then how it is getting performed, which output is acting as an input to other, how these are connected, how they are creating a nest, we can understand that. To a system design, of course, it will finally help us to design the whole system with minimum error and maximum productivity. Okay, that we can expect from the hierarchical task analysis. Next part is cognitive allocation and functional methodology. Of course, it's an extension of HTA. Numerous approaches has been taken which develop from this allocation of the system sub-goal, which is there in HTA. In this method, 4 basic types of sub-goal allocations are present. 1. Only human. 2nd. Only computer. 3rd. Shared by human in charge. And 4th one, shared but computer in charge. Okay. So, somewhere the errors or problems or the system is completely by human, completely by computer or the machines. Some cases shared with the other counterpart like machine and human, machine or computer, but main charge is taken by the human. And the fourth one just opposite, where computer are the major, and however there is a charge which is taken by the computer. Okay, so it's a shared thing, however majorly done by the computer. So you can really start gathering information related to such type of system where only human is present, where only computer is present, where human computer both are present, however human is dominating, whereas in the next where computer is dominating. It will try to get such kind of examples, and then if you do this cognitive allocation of function and methodology, maybe you can try to evaluate it. It's for your practice. So each sub goals can be allocated depending upon the skills and technology. So 4 criteria are applied: the job satisfaction of a person, how satisfied a person to that particular job, the potential for human error. So what are the things available in the system, which are the potential causes for human error, the potential effect on the situational awareness, which is very very important, because if you are completely aware about the situation that is going to come, maybe cognitively you are more powerful to handle that particular situation. Okay, so this is very important, and the resource implication of the allocation. The next tool or technique that we are going to discuss is the critical decision method. So for all of you, I suggest today you will learn the basic things, what are the varieties available, so that we are learning, and in the next class we will take each and every, not next one class, all other next classes, what we will take, every detailed techniques, every techniques we will detail it out. Okay, so starting from the steps, starting from the first step, second step, and then how do we conclude the data. Okay, we will do that. So this is critical decision method. It is an update and extension of the critical incident technique. It structures the interview in an incident analysis to review the critical decision points. Okay, so it's very very important that we really understand that what are the critical decisions we need to take in a particular system when we are present, when we are working. Okay, so it's a structures you need to follow to prepare that interview, and we need to analyze that how these critical decisions has been taken. So an investigation is done with detailing of the incident timeline and looking at the decision according to the timeline. So if an event happened, then how the event happened, all timeline need to fill, and which decision has been taken. So why that decision, why that critical decision has been taken by the operator. So this method will give you an understanding of all this. So it will help you to analyze the system thoroughly, and it will give you a direction where the design interventions are really possible to enhance, where are the ergonomics intervention are really possible to enhance the system performance and total productivity of the system. So a series of questions are presented to define each decision. So mainly these are some examples: what information cues were attended to, then what are the situation assessments were there, what information was considered, so maybe there are n number of information, but the decision maker has considered 3 or 4. Why? Which one? So all these queries are very important when we are talking about the critical decision method. What options were considered? So if there are 4-5 options available to choose, I have chosen a particular. Why that options I have chosen, why I relied on that particular option. So these analyses are very important. Okay, so what goals were to be achieved, so being the operator of that whole system, what I was going to achieve in that particular case. So all these type of information, all these varieties of data, these are basically not information, I will consider as data. Okay, so these data will help the researcher to get a direction that where the intervention points and how do we improve the whole system after the intervention. So this will lead you towards the intervention. So the approach can be generated in, of course, as I mentioned, that it's a large amount of data, huge data set. Okay, so the source, this particular method will give you enormous data. Maybe in a particular research study we will not be able to handle so much. It needs 2-3 more objectives to handle such data. So it's very important tool. The questionnaire structure should help the analyst identify the conflicts and contradiction between and the within interviews response. Okay, it's very important. So we will be able to identify these conflicts and contradiction once we go through this critical decision method. Okay, the next is applied cognitive work analysis. It's also a very important and useful tool and frequently used tool. Very important thing is frequently, very frequently we use this particular tool. So it is based on the analysis of demands and constraints that are inherent in that particular task domain. Okay, so what demand we have and what are the constraints available, okay, in that particular inherent task domain. So it is based on the analysis of these two components. So how I am fulfilling it, how I am going to achieve it. Okay, it has been used in process control and command and control environment. It's very important that when there is a possibility to control the environment through some command, okay, so those cases this particular tool is being used. The aim of this methodology are to approach design holistically, considering all aspects of the system, mainly structure, procedure, training program, automation, database design and sensor. Okay, so it's a holistic approach, as I mentioned very initially. So it talks about demand, it talks about constraint. So how do we manage them, how do we fulfill the objective of the system in taking consideration of all these things. So this is very useful tool in that case, and it says that it's an holistic approach. Then what will happen, we will be able to try to visualize the whole system together and we will be able to understand where the interventions are possible. So each and every tool, it's not only this particular tool, each and every tool basically gives you an understanding that where the intervention points are, and if we do intervention, what will be the kind of impact. So you can really visualize it. So every tool, but however all tools are not similar. Based on the objective of your research, you can choose any one of them. So the basic steps that we follow over here is development of a functional abstraction network, determining the cognitive work requirements, identifying information relationship requirement, representing design requirement and presenting the design concepts. So these are the basic steps. So design concepts till design concepts. So it gives real indication where and how the designs can be possible. So next part of this whole chapter will be the error analysis method. So in this error analysis method, we will deal mainly two components. So these method focus on the prediction of human error. So till now, whatever we have done, we tried to gather information from the system, whereas in error method again we will try to get information from the system. However, it is very much connected to the human performance. Okay, so first one is Sherpa. The full name of Sherpa is Systemic Human Error Reduction and Prediction Approach. In recent days, many research studies basically use this particular tool to get an understanding how the whole system is performing. The next is task analysis for error identification. Again, kind of result we will be getting quite similar. However, the variables are different, the results are little different, and it gives you different indication. So let us start with Sherpa. So what exactly it does? It is a part based on human task analysis. Okay, so Sherpa is used to analyze what can go wrong in task performance. Okay, so what is possible way where we being an operator may go wrong. Okay, so it may happen that when we design a particular system, we are expecting that the system to perform a certain manner or certain way. However, if we go for this particular analysis, we may predict that while following this process where the human may go wrong. Okay, so again it's a prediction, it's a prediction. So when we do a prediction, we can improve the system before we meet any accident. Okay, so to prevent any hazard, to prevent any accident, we may analyze the system using Sherpa. At the core of Sherpa is a task and error taxonomy. So we will giving different nomenclature, different counting of those type of error. So each task can be classified into 5 basic type that we will be discussing. So Sherpa uses hierarchical task analysis with an error taxonomy to identify credible errors. Sherpa is used in control room task, maintenance task, transportation task, and command and control task. So these cases definitely we can use Sherpa. It's very clear identification where we can use Sherpa as a tool to identify your error. So if you have such situation, definitely you can pick this particular tool to analyze your situation or analyze your error. So it is a divergent error prediction method. It works associating with 10 error method with each action, every action associated with 10 error. It is an over-inclusive strategy to novice for selecting error method, and the novice user, like many of us when we start our research work, we are really not really expert. So for those cases, play safe than sorry approach, like let us do it. If we go wrong, we can come back again, redo it. Okay, some kind of, so if we are in that particular phase, Sherpa definitely will help you to get better data, better information. Okay, so Sherpa definitely is an useful tool for any learner if they have cases like maintenance task, control room task, transportation task, and command control task. Okay, then next is task analysis for error identification. So it is based upon a theory of human product interaction called rewritable routine. Very important, very commonly used term, rewritable routine. So if we are following a routine, how do we rewrite and improve our performance? It's very general information. However, it's very scientific, and we coin this terminology to to use as a tool and use as a data in this particular field. So it's very important, and again, as I mentioned, it gives you a direction to where you can start your intervention. So that the idea of rewritable routine is transitory. Of course, it's very important, either becoming completely override or somewhere you modify. So wherever you find this is not really going to work, you rewrite it completely. Whereas it may happen some parts are quite okay, you find the data says this is feasible, you keep them, whereas those parts are not feasible, you change and rewrite that particular portion. So based on this theory, this task analysis for error identification represents and analyze the dialogue between people and product. So this particular tool has two forms of output. First is predicted errors from human interaction with a particular device. So when you are interacting, so what are the predicted error? And the second component, what you get as an output, is a model of task flow based on the mapping human action onto state space diagram. Okay, it's very important in a form of state space diagram. So how the information is processing, so it's a mapping of human action. So the task flow model is used as a part of an analytical prototyping procedure to assess a virtual product. So if you are creating a virtual product, then you can do this particular task. It is a convergent error prediction technique, this particular method, that task analysis for identification, we call it TAFE. This TAFE can be an convergent error prediction technique. So what it does, identifying the possible transition. Here it's very important, it's a possibility, it's not the confirm. Okay, there are possibilities. So from these possibilities you have to choose where exactly the interventions can be done. So identifying the possible transition between the different state of a device uses the normative description of behavior to identify potentially erroneous action. So here also we have n number of errors, whereas which one is more potential, so we have to remove them, we have to rewrite them, right? So we really need to identify them and describe them and eliminate them. So the novice prevent the individual generation too many false alarm. It may happen when you do not know, you are not aware about that particular situation. In a small error also you may raise a big alarm, which may cause a problem to the whole system. So this particular method will help you to stop to such kind of action. So this is very important. So before you go for any kind of design intervention or ergonomics intervention, this will help you to give a gradation that where exactly you should start. It may not then each and every step the intervention is required. Somewhere you need to identify which one is more, which one is less, right? So this will help you to do that. The next is workload and situational analysis method. So again, let us understand what is mental workload, a multidimensional concept incorporating task and performance demand together with operator skill and attention. Okay, so it's a multidimensional concept. It's a multi-dimensional concept. So now from many dimensions we can really try to understand what this particular situation is, what this particular concept is. So multi-dimensional concept incorporating task, first is task and then performance demand together how the operator's skill and attention is connected with the whole activity. We need to understand that, and then we analyze the mental workload. So task design is challenged with keeping mental workload within an optimal performance zone where workload is neither too high or too low. So here, if workload goes too high, then maybe there is an error, there is a hazard, there is a problem in the whole system. If it is too low, then again the similar, not similar, but problem may happen. So how do we optimize? You know, in my earlier course also, I always try to, or being a practitioner of ergonomics, we always try to optimize the system. So it's not about maximum, it's not about always high, it's all about how do we optimize our productivity in comparison with the input, resources, human health and all those things. So here also basic concept is optimization. Okay, optimization, how do we optimize it? So what if the workload is very high or workload is very low, then definitely the total performance of the system, the productivity of the system will fall, right? So how do we optimize it? It is very necessary. So this tool will give you an direction, how do you do that. So measures of mental workload: primary and secondary task performance, physiological measure and subjective measure. So these are the components that you need to do in this particular case. Now workload and situational analysis method, this is a topic which is emerging, and many system designer, many design practitioner, many ergonomists, industrial engineers really try to go for these tools nowadays, and many research papers are coming out with the concept of this situational awareness and situational analysis method. Okay, so we will have 4 major area that we will be discussing here. One is NASA Task Load Index and Situation Awareness Rating Technique. Second is Multiple Resources Time Sharing Model. Third is Critical Path Analysis. And finally, Situational Awareness Global Assessment Technique. These 4 types or 4 varieties we will be discussing. So let us start with multiple resources time sharing model. So this particular model based on Wickens multiple resource theory. Okay, see, everything I will not be able to describe in this particular class. However, you should pick up these keywords, like here Wickens multiple resource theory. Okay, I do not have scope to discuss it here. However, you can study yourself. If you have question, you can definitely come back to us. Okay, so according to this particular theory, there is more than one commodity in the human processing system that may be assigned resources like properties. Okay, so allocation, flexibility, sharing and all those things. So we need to understand in a system how these are being placed. Okay, once we understand, then we can make the connections. So the important of this particular relationship in this particular model are mainly 3 direction. So 2 tasks require separate attentional resources and they will be time shared efficiently. So maybe we identify 2. So 2 tasks where the time equally or time shared by them, and they may need separate attentional resources, whereas 2 tasks require common attentional, somewhere separate, somewhere it is common. The performance on the task will depend on the resource allocation. Whatever resources is being allocated by the system, based on that you may decide, and when additional resources are needed for the performance, the task difficulty is increased. So if additional resources are there to enhance that particular performance, definitely there will be an increased difficulty in that particular task. So we may get this information. So it predicts the workload in situation where multiple tasks are performed concurrently. Okay, so multiple tasks are performed concurrently, so we may predict the workload in such situation using this particular method. So this model distinguishes between perceptual modalities, processing stages, processing codes and responses. So three things: perceptual modalities, what it does, this particular model distinguishes between the perceptual modalities, processing stages, processing codes and responses. Okay, so how these things are connected? So it's basically establishing the relationship, establishing the connection between each. It can be used for heuristic and computational evaluation. Next that we are going to do is the multimodal critical path analysis. What it is? Definitely we will discuss in detail, however here it is a small description. So CPA is based in project management literature. So it is not very commonly used tool in design. However, nowadays in the field of design management, in the field of industrial management, we use this particular tool, whereas it's a multimodality of people is based in a human factors literature. Okay, so if we go back to earlier days where human factors are described in different way, and the way how we define, we may get an input for this particular tool. So traditional method for modeling the human responses: time not responding to the multimodality. So this MMCPA, why we say it multimodal? Okay, actually it's a critical path analysis. Basically it's a critical path analysis method. However, as this is very specific to the multimodal, because nowadays systems are like this. So multimodal critical path analysis uses the approach of multimodality to model task time with claims for greater accuracy. Okay, so we want to achieve the level of accuracy, very fine system. So those cases it is important. If two or more tasks occupied the same modality, then they must be performed in series. So these information, so which one to be performed after which, like the sequence specification, how do we do that? So using this type of analysis, this type of tool, we may get an idea. But if two or more tasks occupy different modalities, they could be performed in parallel. So if the whole system need to be built, what are the things can be done in sequence? What are the information, what are the process to be done in parallel? How do we decide? So the whole system flow, designing this whole management, so system, service, for all those cases this MMCPA is very multimodal critical path analysis is very helpful. So it actually help us to save the whole execution time. It help us to understand the interactions between the activities which is happening in the system. Also it help us to understand where the possible errors come, where are the possible error, the sources of error. Okay, so using this tool we can get all this information. So when it is a requirement to design the whole system, this type of tool is definitely a big help. Then is situational awareness global assessment technique. Again, it takes information, it takes data from few of the earlier tools that we discussed. So this method presents recall probe questions when the task is interrupted to measure the awareness. It measures 3 levels of awareness. First is perception of element, very important, if we do not perceive the elements whatever present in our workstation, in our workplace, it becomes very difficult for someone to react on it, right? So how I am perceiving the elements present in the workstation, each and everything, how I am perceiving it, how I am getting influenced of it, it's very, very important. So, and it keeps on varying person to person, position to position, situation to situation. The same light source can have different impact when we are in different situation. So how do we perceive, how it help us to take this critical decision? So this particular process will help us to understand that. Then comprehension of the situation, how I am comprehending that particular situation in a particular cases, okay? And then prediction of the future status. Of course, my decision will help to act something, and how do I predict and how do I act, because my prediction will lead me the lead me means I mean to say the operator, lead the operator to take some action, right? So here it is very, very important how they are perceiving the element, how they are comprehending that particular situation, and how they are foresee the situation, how they take the status ahead, okay? So the recall probes are developed using the HTA type technique to elicit the operator's goal. Questions at each awareness level can be developed because it has different stage. So you can really develop 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. This method also can be used in aviation, questions about the perceptions of elements and all those things. So airspeed, altitude, fuel state. So basically when there is an air accident, so how and why it happened. So it may have sequential error. So how do we analyze it and how the design can prevent such incident further? So this type of tool will give you such data. So this is very, very useful in many critical situations. So it's not only aviation industry, in many industry where lot of parallel informations and cross connecting informations are going on and it is going to affect the system. For those cases, these type of tools are very, very helpful. So it's what I can say, it's a overall chart that you can see. It's just a data representation that where and how you can use them, what is possibilities. So using this particular form, you may choose which one is useful for your objective and which one to be choose to fulfill your objective. So this is just a representation of that. You can use for your own, but it is not only this. Apart from that, based on your specific objective, you can have some changes here and there. It's not only fixed, okay? You can have your own modification, but this is basic. This you can use it, okay? So today I would like to conclude with all these tools that we are going to discuss, already discussed today. However, each and every tool we will be discussing in detail in further classes. So already I think I mention always that although somebody is telling this tool is beneficial for this tool is beneficial for that, this technique we should use for this technique can be used for that. However, it's absolutely the researcher's decision that which tool to be chosen, because the researcher is the only owner of his or her objectives. So based on his or her objectives, what data or what deliverable they are visualizing, based on that they can pick the tools and techniques available in the literature. Okay, so from whatever tools I have discussed till now, you can use any one of them or in combination based on your objectives. Okay, so from the next class onwards, what we will do, we will go for the detailing. So starting from the history majorly, and then how do we collect data, how do we analyze the data, and what can be the possible interpretation of such data. If possible, in some cases I will give some example which I have with me, then you may practice it at your end, and if you have any question or any query, definitely you can discuss it in the discussion board or in the interaction session. Thank you for today.